יש? טוב. אנחנו מתחילים עכשיו את החלק האחרון של היום הארוך והמעניין שהיה לנו. And I would like to invite Avi Cohen to speak about creating value in technology companies, lessons learned. And Avi will talk about an interesting incident that took place while he was running he was Group VP at KLA Tencor Corp. Avi, will you please?
Where is Ken? He said he's going to monitor me and make sure I don't say anything wrong. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to try to share with you something I called lessons learned in a high-tech company. Oh, here you are. I was waiting for you. And let me start by telling you lessons learned where. And I want to just give you a very quick introduction to where I believe I learned those lessons. So I made the circle of from a startup all the way to a fairly large company. In 1985, I founded a startup called Allegro. That is a time that startups in Israel were not too many and not very common. Actually, I was talking in some other forum of MIT, and I mentioned that at that time, I think there was only one VC in Israel. Anyways, I spent there about 9 years. The last 3 was after the acquisition. We sold the company to Octel Communication in 1991. Octel was a public company at the time. Eventually, Octel was also sold in 1997. This is after I left. For $1.8 billion. At that time, our startup was already completely embedded in that company. So that's one part. Those are 9 years. My next almost 12 years were at KLA Tencor. Actually, I started there. It was KLA Instruments. I started responsible for the operation in Israel, and I ended up with a responsibility in corporate for the mythology group, which was about 6 or 7 divisions. And in 2006, I made a decision to come back to Israel. But I want to tell you, when I started in KLA, I think when I interviewed, let's see if I remember, the company just finished a $240 million year. That was 1994. And when I left, the company was above $2 billion. So it was an interesting ride to see a company going from 200 and so million to above 2 billion. And most recently, I've been spending the last year and a half in ECI as COO. And it's been an interesting year and a half for ECI, which some of it I'll share with you in terms of my experience. So I'll talk about a few lessons learned from a variety of those opportunities, and I'll tell you some stories around them here and there. So the first thing that I want to share with you is, in terms of lessons or beliefs, whatever, is that strategy, I believe, comes before tactics. Big word, strategy, but I think it's fairly simple when you focus on it. Really, strategy, what it is about picking a direction, and not only just picking it, but implementing it, what I call relentlessly. It's a way for a company to stay focused. It's a mechanism for the organization, if well communicated, to understand what the company is all about and where you're supposed to be at any moment or any given time. Strategies cannot be built without a fairly intensive process, which I use the word cycles of understanding, which include reviewing some facts, asking all the right questions and many questions, engaging in a very strong debates, and it's not only one time, but it has to be done every so often. It's a form of learning and making decisions, The end of a process like that is that if you are able to articulate your strategy, you can translate it into a set of concepts that essentially guide all your efforts in the company. Without it, you will be making more mistakes, you'll be less focused, and you will know less why you're doing certain things. And therefore, it is really an internal platform for decision making. It's a platform for having consistent priorities, trade-offs, and everything at the end of the day will end up being a resource allocation exercise, because we can't be everything for everybody all the time. We'll never have all the resources that we need. And when we sit down to figure out what to do and how to allocate our resources, being a small company or a large company, it will boil down to, do we understand what do we want to do? And to me, that's all about what I just spoke about, which is summarized as called strategy. It's very easy to confuse strategy with tactics. I've seen many times what I call budget exercise being a form of replacing strategy. An annual budget process is not a way to create a company strategy. In general, budget is not about how much to allocate to each activity that we happen to be doing or we happen to have around here. Budget is a tactical tool which is about determining which activities best fit our strategy and how do we strengthen that and how do we stop doing things that either are not aligned with our strategy or they shouldn't be done. So confusing it with strategy is easy. I've seen it done, but it is the wrong vehicle. Second thing is, learning, if you may, is that I believe differentiation is what drives returns. Customer preference is driven by differentiation. Creating a differentiation is about decommoditizing, and it's if not the only way, the major way to create pricing power. Very hard to do it without it. And there are markets that are tougher to do it. There are markets that are easier, markets that are more regulated and have more standards, sometimes tougher to do, but possible. It is about sustainable differentiation that creates competitive barrier and therefore give you the economic success. Without it, it is much, much harder. And I think differentiation is not just something you say, it becomes a culture. It's the way you drive decision, the way you get up in the morning and try to figure out what you do that day, and the way you manage your business. If we try to connect strategy and differentiation, let me use a few things that other people said, like Jack Welch said, that when you think about strategy, think about innovation, technology, internal processes, and service add-ons. Whatever works to be unique. And that's the key, whatever works to be unique. It's tough in our world to compete, to create value without being unique. Jeffrey Moore says that everything that gets done in a company is either core or context. And core is the part that creates a differentiation. It's all the processes that creates differentiation and sustainable competitive advantage. And the context are all the other important things that we do, but they don't really create that value. If you focus only on context, you eventually deliver diminishing returns. An organization that focus on context only become uncompetitive. And strategy at the end of the day determines what is core to companies' competitive advantage. And this is the way one can connect strategy and differentiation. The third thing that comes after that is that core competence is something that you need to evolve. It's not something you decide and you say, that's what it is, and I stick to it. In today's economy, technology advantage, which is something that in Israel we focus quite a bit on, is often a temporary stage or a temporary state. Very hard to stay with it all the time. As Jeffrey Moore says, today's core becomes tomorrow context, and companies must evolve their core competency based on the environment that they operate in. And one way is to continuously move people, move resources. We talked about resource allocation. You got to shift them from to the new cores and to the things that creates the differences. It comes with a culture of constant innovation. Why do we need to innovate? There's a big pressure on innovation today. It comes with a way of globalization, deregulation, commoditization. It all pushes us to innovate. Innovation is a way to protect against inertia, and it requires continuous move of resources to the right place in the company. As a culture, I believe we cannot accept comfort. We cannot accept cruising along. We need to keep our organization agile, but not allowing to settle for small improvement. It's a mentality and a way of thinking. Someone said even if you are on the right track, you'll be run over it if you just sit there. And it's the kind of thing you got to be worried about on a daily basis. I believe one need to create, I connected back to what I said about differentiation, a roadmap for differentiation and discontinuities, and it doesn't happen on its own. My experience is that unless you put a small team, it can be as small as you want, aside, out of the day-to-day, and you protect them, which is really hard, but you need to protect them and budget them and allow them to do things that are not necessarily the day-to-day, as a separate effort, very hard to create that roadmap for differentiation, which, as I said before, is one of the key things for to compete today. And that connects to technology. I believe technology could be a growth engine, and it's an accelerator to a strategy of a company. It is not a strategy on its own. New ideas and technology should not be running your company, but rather you should figure out how to apply them in a coherent fashion so that it reflects the company's strategy. And I'll tell you a story about it in a minute that connects a little bit to this concept that you need to figure out how to use it and how to create potential around it. The motivation of your technology group that you put aside and you really protect them and don't let anybody touch them when there is need for more resources, should really be motivated by the idea that there is a potential that can be realized that hasn't been realized at this point, rather than by a fear of getting behind the competition. Let me tell you a story about a division that I ran for many years in KLA. It's called the optical mythology division. I don't want to get into the technology, but give you just a little bit of the background. The division that has the largest portion of it here in Israel is called optical metrology, and they are in the business of measuring overlay. Overlay is a registration between two layers in the production of a VLSI. It uses traditionally a microscopy tool, an optical tool, and it uses what you see here, some target that gets printed on the wafer, which is called box in a box. We don't need to know a lot about it. I just want to tell you that the division was able to increase market share from less than 20% in 1994 to more than 75% in 2002 by focusing on continuous improvement of the product, which is this tool, in terms of performance, capabilities, ease of use, cost of ownership, developing customer relationship, all the things that all of you are aware of. However, the next 15 to 20% share required changing the rules. There was just no way to continue increasing market share, which in a market of that particular business, which is not billions but rather hundreds of millions, was important. As Moore's law continued to push, and I don't know if everybody knows the terminology, but essentially this shrinkage that kept driving that industry for many, many years. I'm not sure about today anymore, but for many years it was true. Maintaining the process, at the right place was very hard with this target. There was not enough information. If you look at this target, there is a box and another box, and essentially this box, the size of it is tens of microns, when the measurement had to be with accuracy of sub-nanometer. So there isn't enough information here. It was a big problem. And again, without getting into technology, that was the issue. The division understood the business potential, behind this changing the rules, because taking our customers from something that they're very used to something new in a conservative market was extremely hard. But they decided to develop new technology, IP around it, and develop a new target to replace the way people doing business. So imagine you come to Intel and you say, Intel, you know how you do certain things? We got a better idea. It's pretty tough, but doable sometimes if you can really show them the value. And here's an interesting thing. The initial approach that was taken by the group was, hey, we're going to have a new target, let's design a new tool. We'll just go away from microscopy and we'll have this new idea, we'll do some scanning or whatever, and we'll have a much simpler, smaller tool, new way, completely changing the rules, we'll take away the market, the competition will go away. Well, guess what? It was too hard, but it was very innovative. And as a result of extreme difficulties with the new tool approach, the team reverted, actually, went back to something that seemed a lot smaller in terms of the innovation content of it, which was focused only on the target and leveraging the existing tool, which was a microscope. And the end of the story is that if we focus on it, which seemed initially as less of an innovation than the entire idea, that division managed to change the rules and increase market share. I think today, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know anymore, I think it's above 90%. And it's an interesting story where technology was there, it was important, by being able to focus on what you're trying to accomplish with the customers, a smaller thing made a big difference. The sixth thing is what I call a culture of discipline. And, you know, I ran into it many times here in Israel. People say, oh, discipline process, you mean bureaucracy. Well, I don't think that discipline and bureaucracy is the same thing. As a matter of fact, I think bureaucracy compensates for lack of discipline. And many times bureaucracy, we know that it decreases creativity and entrepreneurship, but is not about discipline. As a matter of fact, in my mind, great companies are the ones that have this duality of culture of discipline with culture of entrepreneurship. Otherwise, it's very hard to arrive to the right decision. So, as I said, the culture of discipline is built around this duality of clear constraints on one end, but also gives people freedom, responsibility, authority to make decisions. And when you do it right, business processes is not rigidity, it's not no innovation, and it's not slowness. I'll give you an example. Again, at KLA, there were some very key business processes that some of them are the annual strategic planning, the quarterly business review, our quarterly resource allocation management, and the product life cycle. There were processes, but they were not a list of here's what you got to do, close your eyes, you don't have to think. There were frameworks with many degrees of freedom, but it provided scalability for a company, it provided common language, and it also made sure that people don't take any shortcuts and don't repeat mistakes that many people made before. The framework basically allowed you to stay away from mistakes because many people made those mistakes in the past, and the processes were defined in a way that allowed you to just follow a framework and stay away from repeating those. The seventh thing, I call it simple organization. I think it comes with roles and responsibility being defined in a clear and non-vague way. I know that, and I ran into it many times, there are beliefs that vagueness or amimut is a way to manage. I happen not to believe that. I happen to believe that clear roles and responsibility are very important in organization. Organization, at the end of the day, should reflect those roles and responsibility as we define them and the way we want to operate a company. It should be very obvious who is responsible for what in a company. It cannot be vague because that creates energy being invested inside the company instead of outside. The other thing is that I believe that organization charts should be as flat as possible. And, in Israel, you run into many situations where everybody wants to be a manager. And at the end of the day, you look at the organization, you find that every manager has 2 people reporting to him, and it creates lots of waste, lots of complexity in the organization. I believe that managers should have 6 to 7 people, and if they're experienced, maybe 30% more. Let me talk to you about some major initiative that we did in ECI after we turned ECI into a private company. I don't know how many of you know, but ECI, 45 years old company, has been a public company for 25 years, and about 6 months ago, we took ECI private. Exactly the opposite of what most of the startups do. They all try to go public. We took the company private. And it's a separate discussion why. I won't get into it, but one of the things we did is we did right after that what I called a roles and responsibility cleanup. The company, after many, many years, had complex organization that was resulted from changing in the business model, changing in the organization, trying to split the company in the 2000s, putting it back again. Many reasons, but at the end we ended up with a ton of things that needed to be corrected. We aligned the company around the business cycle. We basically say, hey, look, there are 2 major things. One is product portfolio management. How do you create value? How do you create the winning position, the roadmap that allow you to implement your business strategy, your business growth strategy, and your business vision? That's one. Second one was customer facing. And we took the customer facing and said, there are 2 pieces to it. One, from the point you have a contact or a lead to the point you get a PO, and everything that comes after the PO. Those are the 2 things you do in customer facing. And basically we took those simple concepts and built the organization around it. 3 divisions. One we call the product division, which is responsible for all product creation and creating the product portfolio and the value that we sell to the market. The service division that does all the delivery relation after PO, and the sales division does everything before PO. And the rest are all metrics service organization or support organization like HR, operation, and finance. Simplify the entire organization, and in the process, about every 3rd person in ECI ended up doing a different job or having a new boss, which is complex, tough, but I think we're starting to see some very important results of less complexity, faster decision making, being able to deliver to our customers and move much, much faster. The 8th point is something I call a culture of teamwork. I believe that's the only way that talented individuals can realize their full potential. Otherwise, 1 + 1 will be less than 2 and not more than 2. I believe it's a competitive advantage because both it's powerful and it's rare. So if you got a competitor who doesn't know how to do it and you know how to do it, it's another way to create an advantage. It is painfully hard to practice this teamwork every day, more than just saying it. Keeping the collective results of a team, or what I call the company, the best for the company as the compass on a daily basis is very tough. It's very tough because the behaviors, the tendencies in the organization are different. Usually there's something we call politics. They make the team less functional, and it creates a lot of issues. And keeping that thing in mind and trying to stay away from that is a tough one. It requires attention. Something I call protecting bad apples, which you always have bad apples in an organization, is important, because if you do protect them, and I had a personal experience with it, it backfires. It's very hard to it causes resentment and undermine trust in an organization, and that kind of environment is very tough to create a winning environment around that and a teamwork. There is an interesting book that I really would recommend to all of you. It's called The 5 Dysfunction of a Team. It talks about what leads to what I call collective results, and basically the absence of trust, which is on the bottom of this pyramid, which eventually doesn't allow for a team to engage in constructive conflict and therefore lack of a team commitment and accountability. Essentially, the outcome is inattention to collective results. It is not enough to be successful on your own. The team got to be successful. This attention to collective results takes a lot of energy, thinking. It's a culture that needs to be developed. The last point, which I called 9, is something I think I really believe in, which is leadership does not mean being the smartest or knowing everything. Although sometimes it seems that it's much easier if it was that way, but it really doesn't have to be that way. And I'll just quote two quotes from Jack Welch, who said that good business leaders create a vision, articulate the vision, passionately own the vision, and relentlessly drive it to completion. And the leader's role is to impart vision and healthy corporate culture, build great people and great teams, and show them how to lead. And his job is not to be the smartest. And I really believe that that's true. I've had many opportunities in the last 12 years in KLA not to be the smartest around in the team, and it didn't stop me from being the leader. I want to end up with I don't know if it summarizes all the 9 points, but it doesn't necessarily summarize some of them. You know, in ECI, we needed to renew the company. We're just in the beginning of it. We've done a whole bunch of things. And basically, we looked at 3 pillars. One was what I call clarity of R&R's, roles and responsibility. And I talked to you about this big organization change that we've made, reducing decision-making complexity and time, and channeling the organization energy outbound and not inbound. The second thing was the whole product development strategy. Over many, many years, the company was extremely vertically integrated in terms of its development. Everything was done in-house. We are in the process of leveraging ODMs, platforms extensively, and reducing the amount of development that is done in-house so that we can get to the market faster, leverage other know-how around us, and the content of each product we come to the market will be reduced considerably from 100% that used to be the way in ECI. And last but not least, by looking again at our business and redefining our core competencies and what it's all about, we decided that manufacturing or supply chain, which was for 45 years considered a core competency in ECI, should no longer be. Manufacturing electronics, we decided, is not something we want to focus on. And as of April 1st, we basically sold our entire supply chain to one of the largest EMS companies in the world and became fabless. In other words, we don't manufacture anything anymore. We develop product, we market them, we sell them, we service them, and we work with our customers. And that's it. Thank you.